Hi, welcome to Renae's Sip and Chat, where we talk about social injustice, racism, police brutality, and much more. Please share the love and continue to listen. Disclaimer: the following episode is about domestic violence, abuse, and abuse against children. If you are easily triggered, please do not continue to listen to this episode. This episode was created to cause awareness to violence and sexual assault. It was not created to cause harm towards the victims or their families. Any information I use in this episode is public knowledge. Alton Coleman and Debra Brown went on a crime spree in 2 months across 6 states that took the life of 8 people. The fatal couple caused mayhem, hurt, and pain in their wake. Alton was given way too many chances to turn his life around. Instead, he used his manipulation to intimidate and continue on his crime spree. Alton would later claim that voodoo made him untouchable by the law, but that was proven false. Alton and Debra went on a crime spree in 6 states: in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Ohio. The crime spree included kidnappings, rapes, armed robberies, and murder. The crime spree that started in Illinois spanned more than 50 days. The spree began on May 29th, 1984, when they kidnapped 9-year-old Vernita Wheat. Now, at first, it was not a kidnapping because Alton had befriended Vernita's mother, Juanita Wheat, about a month before he killed her daughter. So Alton introduced himself to Juanita as a neighbor and would visit her and her children. He would play with her children, and he also took them to the carnival. He told Juanita his name was Robert Knight and that he worked as a manufacturer of automobiles. Automobiles. I'm so country. Automobiles. He took Vernita after he asked her mother if he could take her to pick up stereo equipment at his apartment. Vernita never returned. The address he gave Juanita did not exist. She was able to report Alton and also pick him out of a criminal mugshot. Police went to Alton's apartment, but instead they found Debra. She was living with him, and they interviewed her and found her to be a shy person, very reserved, but Alton was not at the apartment at the time. Vernita's body would later be found on June 19th in an abandoned apartment building. In June 1984, while living in Gary, Indiana, Alton and Debra approached 7-year-old Tamika Turks and her aunt, 9-year-old Annie Hilliard, as they were walking back home from a candy store. Alton and Debra convinced the girls to go with them. They told the girls they had clothing to give them. Now, some reports said that they had clothing to give them, but when I went and pulled old newspaper reports from Chicago, they said in Annie's testimony that Alton and Debra told her and Tamika that they wanted to play a game. So I don't know if they told them both or what. Either way, they lied to both of the girls and took them to a wooded area and tied them up. They took off Tamika's shirt and tore it into small strips, which they used to bind and gag them. Tamika began to cry. Debra held her mouth and nose, while Alton began to stomp on Tamika's chest. Alton then strangled her with elastic from a bedsheet. Alton carried Tamika a short distance away. Annie was forced to perform sexual acts on both Alton and Debra. Then Alton raped her. Alton and Debra both beat and choked her until she was unconscious. Tamika began to moan in pain, which made Debra kill her. She was later found dead in the bushes nearby. Annie was found alive but injured from the assault and attempt on her life. She was found and treated in the hospital. I will now go into detail on the physical injuries caused to Annie due to her being assaulted and raped by both Debra and Alton. It is very graphic. She was a child at the time. I don't play about kids. It makes me angry. Trust me, I'm angry even talking about children because she was a baby. Like, who harms babies? You're sick. Annie was able to give a detailed description of both. She also told the police that the man that attacked her called the woman Slim, which was a nickname given to Debra by Alton. On the same day that Annie and Tamika were attacked, a 25-year-old named Donna Williams went missing. Donna was found on July 11th, 1984, in Detroit, and evidence showed she was strangled to death. Donna's car was found in a park 4 blocks from Alton's grandmother's home. On June 28th, 1984, the fatal couple entered the home of Mr. and Miss Palmer Jones of Dearborn Heights, Michigan, whom they handcuffed and beat severely. Before leaving, Alton tore the telephone from the wall and stole their money. He also took their car. You're going to see a pattern with Alton. He likes to take people's cars, he likes to take people's money, but he also loves to beat people. On July 5th, 1984, Alton and Debra was now in Toledo, Ohio, and befriended a 30-year-old woman by the name of Virginia Temple. Virginia met the couple at a local church and allowed them to stay at her home. She cooked dinner for the couple and even gave Alton a haircut. Virginia had several children, the oldest being her daughter, 9-year-old Rochelle. Although Virginia was very kind to Alton and Debra, they still harmed her and her daughter. When Virginia stopped communicating with her friends and relatives, they went to her home and found her younger children alone and scared. Virginia and her daughter, Rochelle, were found in a crawl space under their home. They both were strangled to death, and Rochelle was sexually assaulted. Virginia was beaten, and her baby's t-shirt was found in her mouth. On the same morning as the Temple murders, the couple entered the home of Frank and Dorothy Duvendak of Toledo, Ohio. They bound the couple with electrical cords. The couple stole the Duvendak's car and money. Later that day, Alton and Debra visited the home of Reverend Millard Gay and his wife, Catherine. The two stayed with the Gays and accompanied them to a religious service on July 9th. And on July 10th, the Gays dropped off the couple in downtown Cincinnati. Also on July 11th, 1984, Toni Story, age 15, from Ohio, was reported missing. She never returned home from school. 8 days later, she was found dead in an abandoned building. Evidence showed she had been strangled. On July 13th, 1984, Alton and Debra bicycled to Norwood, Ohio, but left almost as soon as they arrived. They pretended to be interested in a camper that elderly couple, Harry and Marlene Walters, were selling. They began talking to the couple, and once inside Walters' home, Miss Walters offered them lemonade. Once Mr. Walters turned to get the title for the camper, they were attacked. Alton and Debra beat the couple with a candlestick, bound them, and strangled them. Miss Walters was struck up to 25 times, mutilated, and sexually assaulted. Mr. Walters survived, but he suffered severe brain damage. Alton and Debra stole money, shoes, and jewelry, and the couple's car, which was found 2 days later in Kentucky. Once in Williamsburg, Kentucky, the couple kidnapped college professor Online Carmichael Jr. That's his first name, Online. I thought it was a misspell, but because I never seen anyone's name as Online, but that's his name, Online Carmichael Jr. They made him get into the trunk of his car while they drove to Dayton. Y'all, I'm so country. While they drove to Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio, not Dayton, Dayton, Ohio, on July 17th. The professor was found by authorities in the trunk of his car, but he was still alive. I was surprised when I read that because they just they just going around killing everybody and taking their cars and driving to the next city to kill and do some more. Like, what was the end game in this? What was the point? I don't even know if they knew the point. Authorities became desperate to find the couple. Alton and Deborah were listed on the FBI's most wanted list on July 17th, 1984. And usually, even back then, the most wanted list was like 10 people, but they added both of them because the FBI had got involved and I think it was the FBI from Chicago, and they had enough because they were going from state to state, city to city, just leaving bodies, killing people, beating people. Like, when was enough going to be enough? So Deborah was number 11, along with Alton. The couple returned to Reverend Gay's home and approached the Gays with guns. Now, we just said a few minutes earlier that Reverend Gay and his wife, they were nice to them, gave them a ride, was kind to them. But you see how people do you. Alton and Deborah came back, was like, okay, let's go back to them. And they approached the Gays with guns. The Reverend now knew Alton was a wanted criminal because I'm pretty sure he's seen Alton and Deborah all over the news. Because back then they had them spread it everywhere. Like, all the states and cities were talking about them. The FBI had their face everywhere. The Reverend asked Alton, "Why you want to do us like this?" Alton responded, "I'm not going to kill you, but we generally kill them where we go." The couple stole the Gays' car and headed back to their stomping grounds in Illinois. On their way, they stole the car of a 75-year-old named Eugene Scott, and they killed him. That man made it to be 75 years old just to be killed by two psychos. And like their other victims, he didn't deserve that. I'm pretty sure he was minding his business. Then they come along with another car because they think they're so smart. Anyways, when they were finally apprehended on July 20th, 1984, the couple committed a total of 8 murders, 7 rapes, 3 kidnappings, and 14 robberies. Like, really? A man from Alton's old neighborhood watched the couple cross the street in front of his car while he waited at a traffic light. The guy went to a gas station and notified the police. You know how people always say, don't snitch, don't talk to the police. But when someone's out here doing all this stuff, and Alton and Deborah, they're black people themselves, and they harming the black community, even if they were harming white people, Hispanic people, I'm snitching on them. I'm telling on you. You out here killing people, killing kids, robbing people. You need to be put under the jail. You do not need to be a part of any community. So he went to the gas station and he notified the police. They were approached at a park by the police officers. While officers spoke with Alton, Deborah tried to escape by walking to the rear of the park. Like, honey, they seen you sitting on the bleachers with Alton. And then when they start talking to him, you're going to try to just walk. You really thought that was going to work. Girl. Deborah was searched, and the officers found a gun in her purse. When they searched Alton, he had a knife. Alton denied his true identity, and he had no ID on him. But they knew it was Alton. Like, come on, Alton, you was gonna tell them your name was Robert Knight, just like you told Juanita. About a week after they were arrested, more than 50 law enforcement officials from each state came together to strategize their steps for prosecution. Even though they committed crimes in 6 states, authorities decided to allow Ohio to prosecute them because the state had the death penalty. One classmate of Tony said they saw Alton talking to Tony the day she disappeared. Also, a bracelet that was found under Tony's body was linked to Virginia Temple, which had Alton's fingerprint on it. At the Walters home, a broken bottle was found with Alton's fingerprints. The couple left their bicycles, clothes, shoes, and bloody footprints at the crime scene. And then on top of that, Virginia had cut that dude his hair. Ooh, she cut his hair trying to be nice, and his hair was there too. Now 11 years old, Annie testified that Alton was the one who raped her and nearly killed her in the woods of Gary, Indiana in 1984. The jury also heard a tape of police interviews that Annie were a part of 2 days after she was assaulted. That was so brave of her. I'm pretty sure that was hard. Very sure that was hard. In 1985, Ohio was successful in convicting the pair on aggravated murder charges in May for the murder of Tony Story and in June for the murder of Marlene Walters, as well as their many other violent crimes. They both received the death penalty. Alton also received an additional 100 years, while Deborah received an additional 40 years on kidnapping and child molesting. Alton received the death penalty in 3 states. During sentencing, Deborah showed no remorse whatsoever. She sent the judge a note that stated, "I killed the bitch and I don't give a damn. I had fun out of it." Later in 1991, due to her intellectual disabilities, then Ohio Governor Richard Celeste commuted Deborah's death penalty to life without the possibility of parole. Deborah and Alton were tried separately in Indiana, and both were found guilty of rape, murder, and attempted murder. Although Alton appealed his sentencing several times, he was unsuccessful. Alton was executed by lethal injection in Ohio on April 26, 2002, for the murder of Marlene Walters. His final meal consisted of a steak smothered in onions, fried chicken, salad, French fries, collard greens, onion rings, cornbread, broccoli, and biscuits with gravy. That's good because I heard that they don't give ice water in hell. Yeah, that was kind of mean for me to say, but I'm no, I'm not sorry. I'm not going to apologize for that. Even though Deborah received the death penalty for her role in the horrific crimes in Indiana and Ohio in 2018, Deborah's death penalty in Illinois was commuted as life without the possibility of parole. I think I think this is when the victims weren't notified in 2018 for Deborah's commute. Either way, they should have talked to the victim's family each time, especially with the young girls that went through it really bad in Gary. That's very sad. Deborah Brown is still alive, serving her life sentence at the Dayton Correctional Institution in Dayton, Ohio. Alton was said to be mentally slow, but he had no problem manipulating people to get what he wanted. The police described him as very forward, calm, well-spoken, and deadly. They said he would approach people on the street and he would talk about politics, religion, and things like that. So I guess they were going by his IQ score, but he was smart enough to manipulate people and to gain trust of these women to make them think that, they were safe with him. Alton should have been locked away before this crime spree. The countless number of sex crimes he had, what he killed his friend's daughter, which he was going to be tried on that right before his crime spree. He left with Debra. And Debra, honey, yeah, you went through a lot in life too. I'm sure you was manipulated and you were abused, but there's no excuse for what you did. When the authorities tried to prosecute Alton, they on his sex crimes, they said that he would tamper with the witnesses, which before, like we said, he was intimidating them. And I'm sure his surviving rape victims were terrified to stand trial against him. I mean, that's scary. That's scary having to face someone who sexually assaulted you, because you don't know if they're going to be convicted of this crime. You don't know, if they'll come back. You always take a chance in court. That's why a lot of sexual assault cases and physical assault cases, they go unnoticed or people don't report it. So he had countless rapes, assault, robberies, and crimes under his belt way before he met Debra. But he was still out on the streets and was able to flee prosecution. As we see with many criminals like Alton, their crime escalates over time. It was said by some officials that Alton targets Black people because he hated Black people. Now, Alton is an African American himself, just like Debra. I don't know. In my opinion, most of the crimes like that is probably like a crime of opportunity. I mean, he started in his own community harming Black women. He probably did hate Black women. I don't know, because look at how his mother and grandmother sexually abused him and did all this stuff to him as a child. He probably did hate Black women, but I think he took it upon himself to use his crimes. Well, he started with his friend, of course, like we said, his friend's daughter, and then he went after his niece. So he was doing people that was around him and his family. He was able to blend in with the Black communities. Debra, being a woman by his side, probably made most of their victims feel safe to be around the couple, because a lot of people don't expect women to be vicious and to be the type of person like Alton was. But she did whatever Alton did. So it was believed by Alton's ex-wife that he loved assaulting children and young girls because he deemed them as pure. Even though Debra's lawyers claim she was dominated by Alton, I think Debra was a willing participant in each crime because, I mean, she helped him kill several people. She molested children. She helped him rape people. She was a part of the rape. I'm sure Alton was abusive to her. I'm sure he was. But is that an excuse for her to do what she did? Alton's ex-wife, Beverly Perkins, testified he would abuse her and threaten her family if she tried to leave their apartment to do anything by herself. And this is according to Chicago Tribune. His ex-wife also stated Alton lived with his blind grandmother and a 12-year-old girl whom he would have sex with. They didn't say who the 12-year-old girl was. I wonder if that was another family member that was living, because who would leave their child with Alton's grandmother? I mean, that woman was something else. Beverly married Alton after dating him for 2 years. Like Debra, Beverly met him in a Waukegan bar, and she was just 16 at the time, while he was 21. During their marriage, Alton would beat her before having sex with her. She later divorced him after 6 months of marriage. And Debra's mother, I watched a news clip. She said that anytime Debra would leave and do something by herself and she would come back to the apartment that she shared with Alton, that he would beat her because she didn't ask for permission to leave. That man had a lot of issues, and it came from his childhood. But a lot of you listening have experienced childhood trauma probably in your teenage years and adulthood, but you don't use that as a reason and excuse to go out and commit crimes as he did. He was a ticking time bomb. I mean, those women that raised him, Lord Jesus. And then I also read that his grandmother, she called herself a voodoo queen. Girl, you told Alton that he wouldn't get caught by the police because of whatever voodoo stuff y'all was doing. Honey, he got caught. So obviously that voodoo that you were practicing wasn't working. And I can do a history on voodoo because people try to use that to do dark magic like they did. I don't know. His whole family should have never been allowed to have kids. I don't know where his other brothers and sisters are, but some of Alton's family members felt like he was innocent. Even after all of that evidence we went over. I mean, the bracelets, he left his hair at a scene, blood, clothes, shoes, bicycle. Like, he left so much evidence, fingerprints. And then when they did catch up with them at the park, Alton and Debra, they had different caps and T-shirts with them, and then they were changing, I guess, every few minutes. How's a cap and T-shirt going to disguise you? But whatever. Thank you for staying to the end and listening to this episode. If you did enjoy this episode, please let me know. Follow me on Twitter, on Instagram. The links is in the description box below. There is also resources for people who have been sexually assaulted, because you have to know, like always, you are not alone. You can get through this. The people lives that Alton and Debra affected, they're still experiencing it right today. Some of the victims have tried to commit suicide. They have been addicted to drugs and alcohol. They've been through a lot of things. They have been through counseling because their experiences from him were just so traumatic. And even though he had been through so much trauma in his life, he could have used that trauma to help others, but instead he inflicted trauma on young children, women, and men alike. Alton was put to death. I can't say that a person like him, I would have been happy if he would have lived his life out in the prison system. Because we have to pay for them to eat, drink, and live like the citizens are doing right now for Debra. And it's families of the victims that are still reeling when they talk about this. I mean, it's traumatizing, all the things that they did to those poor girls, the women. I mean, they did it to their own communities. It's crazy. But please leave me a review. I like to read reviews. As I said, follow me on social media. I do tweet a lot now. I'm not on Facebook as much because not much happens on Facebook. And then they always try to kick me off of Facebook. Like, I can report it all the time. I don't think the stuff I say is that bad. So, Mark Zuckerberg, you need to get it together, okay? Y'all, I don't know what episode is going to be next. I'm not going to lie to you because I have a lot planned. But we have made it to 1,000 listenings on all the episodes. That might not be a big number to some people, but that's a big number to me because we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary in June for my podcast. I'm so excited. Maybe we can plan to have season 1 end in June, and then we can take a little refresher and just start again for season 2. Because I am going to talk about Breonna Taylor. I have to have an episode dedicated to her. May she continue to rest in peace, and her murderers can't sleep at night. They need to be arrested. But that's a different story at a different time. Thank you. If I sound like I'm getting sleepy, I am. I had too much wine. I'm not used to drinking that much anymore. And I think it's y'all's fault because y'all told me to drink. So, anyways, y'all have a good day, good night, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this. Please subscribe so you'll be notified on future episodes. Leave a review, share this episode with your friend, and thank you for the support. And remember, whatever you do, do it with all your heart. Love you. Bye.